What if you know that most of the people giving you advice have nothing to lose if you fail? Your banker, your boss, even your doctor. And what if the real reason society feels unfair isn't inequality, but something much deeper? There's a single principle that explains why some rich people are admired and others are hated, why tiny minorities quietly control entire societies, why corporations own your identity, and why the wealthy are often the easiest to manipulate. It's called skin in the game, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. In every interaction, two forces are at play. 1. Information asymmetry, who knows more? 2. Risk asymmetry, who has more to lose? We obsess over expertise, but almost never ask, what happens to this person if they're wrong? If your financial advisor loses your money, do they lose theirs? If your CEO destroys the company, does she suffer? If your doctor chooses the wrong treatment, is their risk equal to yours? This is the hidden layer beneath every human transaction, and once you start asking that question, the world becomes disturbingly clear. There's an old Roman story. A group of fishermen caught turtles. They cooked them. They were inedible. Then a god passed by, and instead of admitting their mistake, they tried to serve him the disaster. He forced them to eat it. Lesson: if you sell something you wouldn't consume yourself, you're not giving advice. You're offloading risk. Modern traders do this every day. They sell bad stocks. They frame desperation as opportunity. They disguise sales as guidance. Legally acceptable? Often yes. Ethically symmetrical? Not even close. Islamic law even has a word for this imbalance: gharar, when one side has too much hidden knowledge. Because fairness isn't just about legality. It's about shared exposure to consequences. Here's where it gets strange. A rigid minority can rule an entire majority, not because they're powerful, but because they're inflexible. If just one person in a family refuses genetically modified food, the whole household buys non-GM. If a small percentage insists on halal meat, stores adjust inventory for everyone. Why? Because the majority is flexible. The minority isn't, and markets follow the rigid. Companies waste millions trying to convince the majority. They ignore the fact that a stubborn 3% can quietly dictate behavior. That's minority rule. And once you notice it, you'll see it everywhere. Let's talk about employment. Why do most people trade freedom for structure? Because companies don't just pay salaries, they build identity. Dress code, internal jokes, corporate language, after-work bonding. They create psychological skin in the game. You're not just leaving a job if you quit. You're losing status, belonging, routine, social structure. Freelancers have flexibility. Employees have identity. And identity is harder to abandon than money. You think you're choosing stability. Often you're choosing conditioning. Society doesn't hate wealth. It hates wealth without visible risk. We admire entrepreneurs, celebrities, creators. Why? We assume they risked something. But bureaucrats, executives, bankers, high reward, perceived low personal exposure. If they fail, shareholders suffer. They still get bonuses. Fairness, psychologically, isn't about equality. It's about proportional risk, big reward, acceptable, small risk, big reward, resented. That instinct is deeply wired into us. Imagine choosing between two surgeons. One looks perfect, polished, elegant, impressive. The other looks rough, unpolished. Who do you pick? If both are successful, the second likely overcame bias, which means competence had to outweigh appearance. In medicine, outcomes are brutal and real. Mistakes cost lives. Lawsuits follow. High skin in the game filters out incompetence. Now compare that to CEOs. If they fail, few die. Bonuses often remain, so selection becomes about image, not performance. Less risk, more theater. Here's the twist. Having too much money reduces your skin in the game. When spending doesn't hurt, you stop evaluating value. Luxury becomes signaling. Salespeople gain leverage. Overpriced restaurants, lonely mansions, unnecessary extravagance. The rich often lose because the salesperson has more to gain than they have to lose. No exposure, no precision. So here's the rule. When analyzing any situation, stop asking who is smart. Start asking who has more information, who has more to lose, who suffers if this goes wrong. That is the real structure beneath power, money, politics, medicine, and relationships. If you want better outcomes in your life, only trust advice from people who bleed when you bleed. That's skin in the game. And once you start thinking this way, you'll never evaluate people the same again.